Assalamu alaikum. In every region, there are always going to be local editions of the game. So, for example, I bought Push and Explosion in Saudi Arabia. So, there is what I have is some Arabic text and Arabic rulebook within the game, which has been released for the local Arab region. And that's fine. If you go in Germany, if you go in France, there will be localized version of the games. But one of the trends that I have seen for Persia, Iran, is that they even not just customize a text or a rule book or just the title of the game, but they retheme the whole game or at least retheme the main cover of the box as well when releasing the game in their region. I don't know the reason, but that always interested me because I would see a game and I would see Instagram or other social media for any game from Iran, and I would say this game looks familiar, but why is the artwork so different? And that was always a charming. So I would go and explore more, and I would find more games. So I thought, why not share my favorite alternate box covers or at least artwork from the Persian alternate games, which are from famous games. So it's going to be weird. I'm in no way expert in Iran or Persian games. So if any of you are there, you can correct me if I'm even pronouncing these names right or wrong. Because being an Urdu speaker, our script is actually very similar to the Persian region because I come from Pakistan myself. So I can read the Persian text, but I cannot understand it. It's just like Americans can read written German or French because the script is the same, but they will not understand the words. Same applies to Arabs, Urdu, Pakistan, and Persia as well, Iran. So that's why this list is going to be, and I don't even know that these games are even legally converted into different versions or not. So don't take my word for that. I just found them on different websites of Iranian board game sellers, and that's where I'm picking them up, matching the components, and then thinking this game is actually this one in the main market and bringing them to you. So this is going to be top 20 list instead because I kept finding more and more, and there were many more. So I had to curtail down this to top 20 list of the alternate covers that I like. The rule being that it's not just the game that I like, it's which I think the game cover from Iran was much better, or the original cover in the English edition is much worse, and that determines where it ranks on the rating. Second thing, before I go into the detail of the actual top 20, I have some dishonorable mentions as well. Not honorable mentions, but dishonorable mentions for the games which actually are worsened by their alternate covers. Yes, that can happen as well, that the original cover was just fine and they made an alternate cover which just isn't that good. So let's first start with those. On -7, I have Imhotep. So this was released as Satrapaki, I think that's how it is pronounced. So this was a complete retheme, not just a cover, a complete retheme that instead of Imhotep is a famous game from Phil Walker Harding where you are taking the cubes on a boats to actually build up the pyramids and monuments in Egypt. But they rethemed it all to build different kind of famous monuments in the old Persian era. And instead of boats, now you're taking them on ox carts. So they rethemed it all, but it just looks ugly, dirty, gritty kind of artwork. So that's why it's my least favorite. The next one is going to be on -6, is going to be modern art. Even though this cover art that you see is much better than the original cover art from the famous game of Rainer Knizia about auctions, but there is much better artwork now available from the Simon edition of the cover art, And that's why if you want to buy a modern art game now, the newer editions have much prettier cover than what the Persian edition is offering. But if you were in olden times, then Persian cover was still much better than the original cover that came out in the English edition. On negative 5 point is going to be Photosynthesis. Now, this box cover was always so beautiful. I don't know why they needed to remake it. Now, the cover that the Persian version has is not bad, but the original cover is so beautiful that you should not just change it. On negative 4 is going to be Dixit. Even though they try to keep the theme of abstract pictures alive in this alternate cover they made, but the original cover is now kind of iconic with a boat going, a theme of story being told through the Arabian desert and the cards flowing on the sands. So the new cover, which I saw, at least I'm saying it new because I'm seeing the Persian covers now, just wasn't as attractive as the iconic cover of Dixit original yellowish cover. On negative 3 is something that I actually hated, that why did they do it, was For Sale Autorama. Now this is a modern game. This was released I think 1 or 2 years ago, not more than that. The original artwork was done by Concha Moria, very famous artist, and the original cover looks so good. Why change it? I don't know. So that's why this is where my hate starts. That's why it's higher on the ranking. On negative 2 is going to be Tokyo Highway, a dexterity game. Now, the original cover, I'll say, is not much of a cover. It's just text written on a box. So they went ahead and made an actual cover out for it, which is kudos to the Iranian or Persian team. But sadly, sometimes minimalistic things work better. So for this game, which has very simple components, a clean design, I think the original simple text and few lines and the cars, that minimalistic look of that board still looks better than the artwork they came up with, which seemed a little bit more dark than what the actual game was. It was Tokyo Highway was called Buzgra. Then the next one is going to be on negative 1 is going to be Splendor, and they came up with a cover for they called the game Karba. Now Karba again just somehow translates to jeweler, which is a better name than Splendor in my opinion. But other than the name, Splendor cover art was never good, but what they replaced it with was a bad cover art again. So you're replacing a bad cover art with another bad cover art, so it doesn't do anything for me. They're both equally bad. So that's why it's my negative 1, that why even go through the effort of doing this if you are not doing it even right. And that's all the dishonorable mentions, that why did you even go through the effort of changing anything. Just keep the original one and add your Persian title if you want. Now let's start with the actual top 20, where I think the new cover is actually better than the original one. But do remember that art is always subjective to each person. Something that a person likes, I may not have any interest in it. To someone, a picture might be Mona Lisa and they might praise it. To me, it's just a picture of an old woman and I might not have any interest in it. So art is always subjective. So these are my opinion, that which artwork, if I had both the names in front of me, which artwork would attract me more. So starting with number 20 is going to be Beasty Bar, or in Persian it was called Dirham Sira. Dirham means coin, Sira means the person who collects it. So maybe someone who is standing at the door and collecting coins for letting you in. Now, even though the artwork is nothing special, but it's more whimsical than the animal theme that was in the original game. The game was all about letting people in a club. They changed the theme in Persian to actually that new cinema has been introduced in the court. and people are trying to enter in the code to see, oh, what's this fancy thing, cinema. And the dirham sirap, that is the guard, is actually selecting which people enters the cinema. So you want to be first in line to actually enter the cinema, and that's what the game is about. So they even changed the theme, which I think is a slightly more funny. On number 19 is going to be Chartae, or in Persian, they actually changed the name to Ragnarok. This is a Vainakinizia game. Personally, I have not heard much about this game. It's about tile placement, making cartography charts. But personally, I just love the artwork of the Persian version as compared to the original one, which just looked very dull and kind of prototype artwork for a box cover in the original version. But the new cover from the Persian version is actually much fancier and would attract me that yes, this looks like an artwork about cartography. Which brings me to number 18, which is the actual game of Cartographers. Now, even though this game is a roll and write, but the cover of the original game from Thunderworks never attracted me because, well, it's a sad old dude sitting and looking at the land. And we have so many other games where a person is standing and looking at a land, Carcassone and Orleans and whatnot. So this one had that sad old dude. The Persian guy, the Persian retheme or the artwork, still I had an old dude, but at least he's not as sad as the original one. That's why it's still low on my ranking, but it's still better than what was in the English edition, what they went with. Now he's at least looking at a map rather than just the land. And there are some fancy creatures, fantastical creatures shown on the cover as well, which matches the theme of the monsters as well, which is in the game. So that's why I still prefer a little bit the Persian cover more. On number 17 is going to be Coup. I don't think the original artwork was bad, but the new artwork in the Persian version is actually looks much better. They even redid all the artwork for all the characters, and just the look and the artwork and the colors of these pop a lot more. So whether you're picking up Coup or Coup Revolution, the artwork from the Iranian edition is much better. On number 16, you will see a big jump in quality of the artwork, which is going to be for the game Sunset Over Water. This was a very light-hearted card game from Steve Finn. And even though the picturesque artwork inside the game is going to be still the same, but the cover art of Sunset Over Water was very drab, very dry looking. It looked like an old romantic novel cover, in my opinion. And the cover never attracted me. But the cover from the Persian edition looks something like Canvas. And initially I thought, did they try to rip off Canvas? But no. Canvas is available in Iranian market with the original cover. And this cover is called, and the game was renamed to called Picasso, based on Pablo Picasso. And it just looks fantastic. On number 15 is going to be a small card game called Red 7. Many people hate the game, but again, this ranking is not based on the game itself, it's just based on the artwork. Now, even though you might say, well, the Persian artwork is nothing special, but if you compare it to the English edition, the English edition was just a splat or blob of white with Red 7 written in it. That cover is not attractive. I will not pick that up, but at least the chalked lines of colors in the Iranian edition is much more appealing, like some race is happening or something. It has a little bit more energy than the original artwork, and that's why on my number 15 is Red 7. On number 14 is going to be Tortuga 1667. Now, do understand that even though this is on number 14, I don't really like the Persian artwork. But this is just because still higher, just because the original game didn't have any artwork. I do understand they wanted to make it look like an old captain's logbook, but it was just dull. And you can change that cover with anything, and I will still prefer it. The Persian artwork, I do think I have seen that, the person hanging from a ship. Maybe they picked up that artwork from somewhere. I cannot really pinpoint that, but well, it's still better than what the original cover was. So that's why Tortuga 1667 is on number 14. On number 13 is really one of the covers which I really appreciate from Iran, and that's going to be for the game Chinatown. They released a retheme of the game called Tehran 1410 or 1419, 1410, I think. Tehran 1410, and the cover looks so beautiful. What they have done with that game, the Chinatown cover, even though it's an old game, but still the cover was so drab and old looking and well boring. But this is much more vibrant with what they did. Chinatown, if you don't know, is an auction bidding game about bidding for locations in your Chinatown, trying to actually have more majority of locations by bidding out other players, buying from them the locations and having a monopoly of locations in the region by yourself. It's a very pure bidding game, and if you're not interested in those, you will not like it because there is no other mechanism in the game itself. On number 12 is going to be Machi, and they released a retheme of the whole game called Shahardar. Shahr in Urdu or Persian means city, so Shahardar means the maker of the city, something like that, or the person who lives in a city. It translates to something like that. Now, the problem that I always had with Machikoro artwork, not just the cover, but even the card art, was that it's all kind of line vector art, too simplistic, too much 2D for me. And it just looked too much flat. Some people might like it, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. It just looked too much flat. But the retheme they did in the Persian edition, that artwork looks fancy. It's still whimsical. It still doesn't break your essence of the actual game, but it looks much, much better. So that's my number 12, Shahrdar. For those who don't know what Machikoro is, you will be building up your card tableau of cards which will be sitting from number 1 to 12. You will be rolling dice, and based on the dice that you roll, you will be getting the resources or activating the buildings based on the dice that you activate, as well as other players might get some abilities as well. So something like Space Base, if you have played, or My Little Farm Shop, those are all based on this kind of mechanism that Machikoro introduced. On number 11 is going to be Jungle Speed. A very, very simple game in which actually you're going to flip cards, and as soon as the symbol matches, you're going to pick wooden monument or whatever totem from the center of the game board. It had a very simple cover with just that totem shown on the box. They came out with Chancho in Persian, which has a much more vibrant action themed box where players are, or jungle people are trying to actually grab, which is gives the actual theme of the game, that how you will be reacting once you are actually playing the game. So that's number 11, Jungle Speed, or in Persian, Chancho. On number 10 is going to be Bohnanza. This falls in the same category that the original cover is so worse, give me anything and I will like it. So even though the new cover is not that great, but you can retheme Bohnanza to anything else and I will happily take that. I love this game, but I don't like the theme of this game. And even though I don't like the artwork of the box itself in the Persian version, it's still better than the English or German version. But actually the cards look much, much nicer. They are happy fruits and vegetables that you are growing. No more beans, no more blue bean, green beans. I don't know how many beans were there, but at least now they are much more happy cards that you are playing with. So irrespective of the box, the whole re-theme still worked. You are a vegetable farmer now. So it was called Jalbaz or something in Persian. And that's the re-theme of Bohnanza at my number 10. And that's why my top 10 starts with Bohnanza. On number 9 is going to be the Crew Quest for Planet 9. I never had a problem with its original cover. But when I saw the cover for the Iranian edition, oh my god, that looks so awesome. So I wish I really had the Iranian version as compared to the English version now, with just how heroic and movie posteric feeling the Iranian edition gives me. So that's my number 9, The Crew, a simple trick taking, a co-op trick taking game where you're trying to win tricks based on specific goals, that what trick you have to win or what trick someone else has to win, and you have to help them out without communicating. On number 8 is going to be Ticket to Ride, and the Persian version is called Shahra. Ticket to Ride again doesn't have a bad cover. It's a good looking cover in itself, but the Persian version came with a re-theme. They just didn't change the cover. Shahra actually means roadway, and they rethemed it to, rather than trains, which I expect are very less in Iran. So instead, because of the size of the country, they went with roadways, and there are too many buses in Iran. So actually, instead of trains, now the plastic shapes that come in this game are made of tiny buses. And you are actually driving these or setting up these buses on the route. And that's so much more appropriate. I think the map looks still very similar, but anyway, the look of the artwork is very much true to the roots of what Irani artwork is, or art of that South Asian region. And that's why I just love the artwork of this one. So that's Ticket to Ride or Shahra at number 8. On number 7 is going to be Sprawlopolis or Agropolis. Now these were button shy games, and if you know, they come in actually wallets. They don't even have a cover art. What I'm showing you is actually not the box. It's the Combopolis is just the artwork for it, that how do they combine the two themes. But they come in wallets. They don't really have an artwork, which is a sad thing because they don't come in a box. And I don't like that. I prefer my games to be in a box, even though the wallet is meant for them to be easily carry over. I would still prefer a box. And that's what they did in the Iranian version. The name is not very intuitive because you cannot read it, but the name is Kisan and Shahr. Kisan means farmer, and Shahr means city. So farmer city, so that means Agropolis and Sprawlopolis. But just putting them in the box, and the artwork was much better than what was in Sprawlopolis and Agropolis, at least what I can see from the image of the cover of the box. And that's why it made it to my number 7 on the list. So these are small 18 card games where you will be placing cards over each other, trying to match shapes or city types. Okay, farms next to this type, roads next to industrial area next to this type of, and trying to make combinations to make or grow your city to match certain point conditions that are randomly given to you at the start of the game. On number 6 is going to be Carcassone. Now this was the original cover of Carcassone when the Persian version came out. So we have to understand that Carcassone has gone through multiple iterations, and the latest cover, I will say the latest cover, which is of the German version and is going to be released soon, is not even available in English, is the best version or best cover that's going to be there. But that's not available yet. But considering that the Persian version came out at the time when this cover was available, which you see on the screen. So it's a hallmark of a difference of the cover art. Even though the theme is still the same, a guy looking at the castle, but they went with such beautiful artwork, and the game in Persian was called Killer Ruth Khan. I'm not aware who Ruth Khan is, but Killa means castle. So it's Castle Ruth Khan. So they are specifically mentioning, instead of Carcassonne, a city in France somewhere, they are specifically mention a castle of some specific Persian region. I don't know about that. But anyway, the artwork is much, much better than what Carcassonne was showing. So that's my number six, Carcassonne. On number five is Cash and Guns. Again, the cover that I have shown here is the first edition, based on which the Persians came out with their own version called Naro, which is an anime themed version of it. And if you think about it, there are so many animes which could fit the Cash and Gun theme, and it just looks so nice as compared to the English edition. And they went with their own re-theme called Naro with that anime theme. But the Cash and Guns, the English version did come out with the second edition, which had more, Family Guy or kind of artwork, and that's fine as well. But if given the choice, I will still pick up an anime themed Cash and Guns, because I do think that type of game suits that artwork more. So on number four is going to be Citadels. Again, there is a new version of Citadels available. This is the original one, and this is what the Persians came out with, which is Citadels. They call it Deja, or Deja, I don't know. But they came out with a complete retheme. The box looked beautiful. It gave the cityscape of our Citadel, and the card art they redid. They didn't go with the horrible looking thief and spy, which were they went with their own card art, and it just looked much more beautiful than what the English version had. So that's my number four, Citadels, a game about hidden roles. Well, not hidden roles, special powers on the cards, which you keep changing and drafting in each round of the game. On number three is going to be an Oink game, which is Deep Sea Adventure. Those who know Oink game, their artwork is not much. It's just vector shapes on a box. So if you make a box art for it, it's easy to actually come up with anything better. But what they came out with just looks so beautiful. It was called Zofab. Don't know what that means, but I hope it means something deep sea or something. And that's what Deep Sea Adventure came out to be, a push your luck game where you're trying to go deeper into the sea, trying to capture the treasures, but you have to return before your other teammates, because if your oxygen run out, then you might have to drop all the loot that you have collected and just return empty-handed. So that's my number three, Deep Sea Adventure. On number two is going to be Downforce. Again, nothing bad that I can say about the original cover of the game, but the Iranian version of the game, now that action that's seen on that cover, the Formula One car just smashing through another Formula One car, the sense of speed that comes from the cover of the Iranian version, that momentum that you feel, just brilliant cover. And I do really wish that I had the option to actually go for that cover rather than the English version cover with just the helmet guy. So that's the Iranian version of Downforce, a racing game about formula cars where you're using cards to actually move all the cars, but the cards decide that which car moves how many spaces. So you're strategically playing the cards that, okay, my card moves more, and how can I actually get my opponent's car stuck in some blockade. So that's number two, Downforce. And on number one is going to be another Oink game, which is Fake Artist from New York. Again, nothing much was on the cover of the original game. It was just a landscape of New York with an aeroplane arriving. But what they did in the original, that sense of movement of the taxi driving through the New York City, the color scheme of that cover, chef's kiss. Beautiful cover they went up with, and that's why it's my number one. fake artist from New York. Again, has nothing to do with either an aeroplane or with the taxi. It's a drawing game in which all the players actually know about what they are going to draw, except one player, and he's trying to fake that what the drawing is. Every player actually draws one item, and the player who doesn't know is trying to make one line, one shape as well on that same combined drawing, while trying to show others that he knows what is being drawn. And at the end, the others have to guess that actually based on the drawing skills of everyone, who was the fake artist. And the fake artist has to guess that what was being drawn. Because if you draw too much better just to prove that you were not the fake artist, then you are letting the actual fake artist know what is being drawn, and you will just give up your clue. So it's a very nice deduction drawing game. But coming back to the cover, just a beautiful Persian cover. So that's my top 20 best covers from Iran. A very unique top 10 list or top 20 list. I hope you enjoyed them, and I hope, just like I was surprised that these kind of re-themes or at least re-artworks of famous games exist, you were surprised as well, and that was informative for you. Hope you enjoyed it, and if it was enjoyable for you, don't forget to subscribe and like. That's it for me. Happy gaming.